Yeah. We unfortunately don't have photos for our radio audience listeners, but I'm curious about that tradition.
Well, that one started in Mary's family from the time she was a wee child. They did the Christmas pajamas, and her mother would go out and buy pajamas for her, Mary's father, and Mary. She was the only child. And on Christmas Eve, they'd have clam chowder for dinner, and after dinner they'd go into the living room, and there would be these 3 pair of pajamas hanging on the Christmas tree. And Mary got pretty used to that and thought it was a good thing, so we carried that on. We got to the point where we had more pajamas than they did, because there were 5 of us. But and you would wear those pajamas to bed when you get up for doing the tree in the morning, while we're all sitting around in these matching pajamas. So.
And have any of your 3 children carried on the tradition to the 3rd generation, is what I want to know?
Yes. My oldest daughter is still into matching pajamas.
Okay. So you're 1 for 3. One more thing, and many of you are submitting questions, and I promise you that I'm going to mix some of your questions in. But in your book also, Mr. Gates, you talk about the fact that when you were raising your kids, television was somewhat limited. You discouraged television watching. Books were unlimited. And the one thing that would let a bedtime be flexible was whether when one of your children was in reading mode and reading a good book. Are you happy that your kids grew up in an era before video games, before PlayStations, before instant messaging, and before Twitter?
I'm not
I didn't mention Google, mind you.
I'm not sure they were. No comment. I'm not sure that they preceded video games. Maybe they did, but it was just a discipline that they were. By the time they got to be 5 or 6, they were going to school, and not long afterwards they had homework and that kind of thing. So we just overruled any notion that you're going to sit and watch television or play games or do anything of that kind on the weekday evenings. And I'm sure we weren't alone in that, but it was part of the business of taking seriously the business of going to school and being a student.
This will be broadcast on the radio later than we've actually done it tonight, but we're just on the eve of Father's Day, and there's a question from the audience that basically is, what would you like for Bill and Melinda to get you for Father's Day?
I'm going to tell you. NetJet.
Ah.
Nothing like NetJet. I couldn't begin to afford to fly around that way, but that is a gift that I receive from them on an annual basis, and it's so wonderful.
So you want a renewal, basically. And I assume, having asked the question, I can get a little commission on that, and maybe 15% of your hours, maybe, to keep Room to Read's overhead a little lower.
About 7.5.
This is classic. There's a card with a question that was completely scratched out, and then they wrote "other side, please." And I actually really want to know what the question is that they crossed out, because it could be controversial. But we'll go to the other side of the card. And can you speak about a mistake you made in the past that allowed you to learn a lesson that has been then part of your ongoing success?
Mistakes? I'm sorry, John. Mistakes?
A mistake you've made in life that you then were able to learn from, that perhaps all of us can also learn from. And if you haven't made any, that's okay,
I'm sure there were a lot of them.
Move on.
One of the mistakes that I've made is to get older. And as a result of that, I don't have any memory anymore. What was your name?
I'm Warren Buffett. I own NetJets.
Gosh, Nothing coming through. I'm embarrassed with this because I'm sure there is a number of good, thoughtful answers to that question. I'm not coming up with
That's
it.
okay. We have a stack that's already
Okay.
9 inches
Sorry.
thick of questions from the audience. That is no problem. Anything you want to pass on, you just tell me. And I'll let you get through on at least a third of those requests. Let me talk about how you felt when Bill and Melinda actually went big with the foundation. You talk in your book, and both you and Mary told your kids to think big and dream big. And when you talk about Libby cold calling Michael Jordan, that was one of the lessons of it, is she wasn't afraid to think big. And at a certain point in time, Bill and Melinda decided to just push a lot of poker chips on the table and take a lot of money out of their personal account and put it in the foundation, where, of course, it is then irrevocable. You have no choice but to then deploy that money. Were you involved in that decision? Were you part of recommending that, or did it come as a surprise to you? And kind of how did it what was it like? That must be an incredible moment to realize that that's happening within your family.
Well, the facts of that matter are that maybe 6 months or a year before, they made the decision that we should start to get into the inequities in global health. They had this article from the New York Times, which they sent to me with a note that said, "Dad, maybe we can do something about this." And so we started to, and I said, "Great." And so I talked to some people, and we went down a couple of roads and made a gift or two here and there. And then we decided that we should have somebody aboard to help us with that. So we hired a fellow who ran an organization in Seattle called PATH, which is a global health charity, really, and they're involved in the technical side of global health. And this man was very well informed, very sophisticated person, and he came to work for us to sort of take that over. And as we got into that a little more, there were the opportunities that they were just kind of overwhelming, and it just seemed to us that we were really just, I don't remember what the corpus of the foundation was at that time, but it was relatively small. And so this man's name was Gordon Perkin. It's conceivable some of you may know him. But anyway, he and I were having a conversation. He said, "Bill, there is just so much going on here. And if they want to really have some kind of impact here, maybe they'd be willing to put some more money in the foundation so we could do a bit more." And I said, "Oh boy, Gordon, well, that's not a bad idea. Maybe I'll talk to Bill about that." So the next day, I gave Bill a call, and I started to give him sort of a little pitch about maybe we should add some more funding to the foundation. And incidentally, they had added a bit here and there along the line. We're probably out at 1999, 2000, something like that. He said, "Well, Dad," he said, "that's interesting you would do that, because Melinda and I have been talking over the last couple of weeks, and we've decided that we're going to put $24 billion into the foundation." Now that's a phone call. Awesome. And that's exactly what happened. It took 5 quarters for that to happen, but they added $24 billion to the principal balances in the foundation, and it changed the world as far as our work is concerned.
I hate to ask a question that sounds like a cliche, but that had to have just made you a really proud father at that moment in time.
Yes. Unbelievably proud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah. And then came the magic day of Warren Buffett's announcement. And I'll never forget watching Bill and Melinda and Warren with Charlie Rose that night. And I don't watch much TV, but boy, that night I was home watching Charlie Rose live, and I was TiVoing it so I could rewind it. And I felt like it was just a day that something fundamental had changed in the world, that it wasn't just the wealthiest couple, and people could say, oh, they're different, they're wacky Northwesterners, they're in the software industry, that's a little bit out there. Because you suddenly had you know, Warren Buffett, who's older, who's from the Midwest, not from the coast, who's more conservative, is considered the world's greatest